Hello, Andy and Stu here. Stu, we've been following Ipswich Town during this miserable season. Rock bottom, 13 points from safety, heading to League One for the first time since 1957. So what are we doing here?
We've been told we've got to hand out some awards, which is going to be very, very difficult. But we've laid out some programmes and some newspapers and a shirt, and we'll give it a go. Only one place to start then, my friend. Best performance.
So many to choose from. The one that's fresh in my mind is going to be the best, and that's the 3-2 win over Leeds. Game full of drama. 90th minute Colin Quain a goal. 2 goals earlier in the game from Flynn Downs. Andre Dazelle sent everybody off with a good feeling. It's fresh in my mind. I like it.
Yeah, always good when someone skies a penalty as well. Adds to things. For me, 5 wins in this season, and I'm not going to pick one of those. Rotherham 1-0, Wigan 1-0. They kind of got away with it a little bit in those games, didn't they, looking back? I think the best they played was during that February-March period where there was a whole load of draws, and the best one of those, West Brom away, went behind to a horrible deflection and showed real spirit to come back into that. I thought they played some really good stuff in the backyard of a team that could still ultimately be promoted.
Plenty to choose from. Worst performance.
Take your pick. What's your poison of choice? Worst performance. 3-0 at Millwall. Brian Clew, caretaker manager, in between Paul Hurst and Paul Lambert taking over. Mr. Lambert was sat just behind us in the director's box at the Den. Was his scarf pulled up over his face? We were wondering if he was regretting his decision to take the job at that moment in time. Outplayed, bullied, full value for 3-0. That was a pretty low point.
I'm going Boxing Day. You've had the high of a victory over Wigan, a draw with Sheffield United. You're thinking, here we go. Could this be? Loftus Road on Boxing Day, really flat, some bad goals conceded. Always worse to lose at Christmas. Not good.
We're calling this one the Hammer Blow Award. They're not awards. What was the biggest blow for you that Ipswich couldn't recover from?
So many blows, but I'll take it into the first day, the first game of 2019. 1-0 up at home to Millwall after a brilliant Jack Lancaster goal. They've lost that game 3-2, and from then on, a cup exit followed a few days later. I don't think they ever came back from that.
I'll take it back a little bit further than that. I think the moment I knew they were down, deep down, was the Bristol City game. Another game at home in which they've led twice and still managed to lose 3-2. Freddie Sears scores twice. They were pegged back so quickly after 2-1. Horrible Bielkowski own goal in there. That was the moment that I think people walked away from Portman Road thinking, we're not getting out of this.
So that's the hammer blow. What's the what if moment? What's the one thing that could have changed if this had gone Ipswich's way?
Oh, loads of sliding doors moments in there. I go back to the start of the Paul Hurst era and wonder, had they beaten Rotherham in Game 2 when they somehow managed to lose 1-0 in the last moment, had they managed to beat Bolton at home when it was against 10 men for so long, 0-0, but the ultimate in that little period is the Norwich game in September. 1-1 against them, led 1-0, and I still remember that moment where the sea parted and Gwion Edwards went through the middle and he dragged his shot wide. If he scores, it's 2-0. Ipswich go on to win the game. Then goodness knows how it pans out, both for Paul Hurst, for Ipswich Town, for Norwich City. Farker's on the brink at that point, and look what happened from there.
I'm going to go to the start of the Paul Lambert era. He's come in, he's witnessed this game at Millwall, horrible game, but somehow they're 1-0 up against Preston and there's a winger in goal. They didn't win it. They'd already conceded an equaliser by this point and couldn't find a way past Paul Gallagher. Then in the next game, they lead twice at Reading. Let that slip. Win one of those? Who knows? Sadly, they didn't.
Danny Rowe's volley, touch and volley that Paul Gallagher kept out the top corner late on. I remember that.
What a ridiculous season. Let's move on to some individual awards. Who's your player of the season? Who's your light in the darkness?
Most consistent in an overall dreadful season for the team, Matt Pennington arrives on loan from Everton summer deadline day straight into the team against Norwich and played really well in there. And it seems strange to give it to a defender in a season where you've conceded so many goals, and he was far from faultless. But for me, he was the best of a bad bunch in terms of consistency levels.
I tend to agree with you, but I'm also going to put forward Freddie Sears, who ended as the top goal scorer despite having his season ended by injury in February. Under Lambert, he had a real resurgence. He looked great cutting in from that left-hand side. What could have been? I'll give it to Freddie.
Young player of the season, where are you going with that?
Only one candidate for me. He's come from absolutely nowhere. First pro deal signed in August. He's ultimately signed another new contract during the season because of his good displays. Made his debut under Paul Hurst, scored a really good goal against Millwall, and that's Jack Lancaster. Real hope for the future with him.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, but I think Trevor Chalobah also needs huge credit. I know he's a loanee, but he comes in from Chelsea, signed as a centre-back. His first ever senior season of men's football. He's played the bulk of the games, and he's got better and better as it's gone on. And I think he is destined for bigger things, young Trevor.
Most improved player? Who's made the biggest strides over the season?
I think encouragingly a lot of the Paul Hurst lower league recruits have found their feet as time has gone on. It was always a big ask for them to hit the ground running as a collective. But the one who stands out most for me is John Nolan. I think he would probably admit that it took him a while to get up to speed of the Championship. A lot of games passed him by. But since Paul Lambert's taken over, we're starting to see what he's all about now. I think he's arriving late in the box. He's a goal threat. He scored against Derby. He scored against West Brom. I think he could be a real key player in League One next year.
For me, not so much improvement on the field, but an improvement in actually being able to be on the field, and that's Teddy Bishop. It was a massive season for him going into it. He was out of contract, but he's been able to get himself fit, do his talking on the field, and showed us just why he was so highly rated in his younger days as it was. So great to see from Teddy, and a great improvement in terms of him just being able to play.
Playing 90 minutes and running at people again, that's exciting. Best signing of the season. There've been a few, 19 altogether. Ridiculous. 12 under Hurst, 7 under Lambert. 9 of those have been loans. So let's set them aside. Of the permanent recruits, who's been the best?
I'm going to go back to one of Paul Hurst's signing. We mentioned John Nolan already, who I think, obviously, a good signing. But Gwion Edwards, for me, he had a great start to the season. Scored that great goal just 5 minutes in, then scored that goal against Norwich. Could have changed things if he'd scored the second. Had a great spell there, went very hot off the boil during the mid-season, came back strong at the end, to the extent that it sounds like there's Championship interest in him. But yeah, for me, Gwion Edwards.
I'll take it a little bit later into the season and go with Alan Judge. If we're talking about who could have an impact going further forward, that was a real coup to get him from Brentford in the first place. This is a player who was on the verge of making a move to the Premier League before he breaks his leg horribly and ironically at Portman Road, and the path has led him back to here, and he's become a real fan's favourite. If we're being hypercritical, it would have been nice for him to get a goal, but he's been all over the place. He's added some nice experience behind the scenes, and to have him signed up, he could be the centrepiece next year.
those are the positive signings of the 19. Some not so positive. Who's the most disappointing signing?
There've been a few that have come and gone, haven't there? Tayo Eden scores
Remember him?
that late equaliser against Blackburn opening day, but disappears after that with an eye injury. We've not heard any more about that. Simon Dawkins arrives in January, has barely kicked a ball. Jordan Graham, I think, has to top it. He came in as a hopefully an exciting winger. Can he rediscover that exciting form that he had at Wolves? He didn't. He had a bit of a stinker against Norwich early on. Faded out the picture. He's ended the season at Oxford.
I'm going to go outside of the 19 newcomers. Not a new signing as such, but I think last August we were talking about Town's best bit of business that off-season being signing Bartosz Białkowski to a new contract, and he had a nightmare season by his standards, didn't he? 3 Player of the Year awards in a row on the spin for him. Was a shadow of that goalkeeper, sadly, and I think it showed on the pitch, and it's part of the reason why Ipswich are where they are. So I'm going to put Bart forward for this one, sadly. Talked about the signings, but there were some key departures as well. Which of the players who left Portman Road do you think Ipswich missed the most?
The goal scorers in general. There's a hell of a lot of goals that came out the side last year. Garner, McGoldrick, Waghorn, and of those 3, it's got to be Waggy, hasn't it? 16 goals in his debut campaign, countless assists there as well. I think they missed him most. Yes, McGoldrick has gone on to be player of the season with an automatic Sheffield United side that have gone up automatically to the Premier League, but he left for a reason. He wasn't fit and firing, and these things happen for a reason, but they faffed about with selling Waggy to Derby, didn't they? That needed to happen sooner, but he's been the biggest miss.
I'm going to go a little earlier in the summer in terms of sales. I'll go for Adam Webster. He departed just a few days after Paul Hurst started in the role. Ipswich entered the opening game of the season with just one fit central defender. They'd previously sold Adam Webster. He's been one of the best in the Championship this year, won Bristol City's Player of the Year award. I think if you'd have had that solid defensive partnership to start the season, maybe that would have been different too.
Biggest injury blow. You've got a fair bit of choice there.
Yeah, plenty of players sidelined, but John Walters was the one for me. So much excitement with a former club captain coming back. Signs were good. Played really well in that Norwich game, just like Matt Pennington, but he was struggling with an Achilles injury. Was sent on as a substitute with that injury against Bolton and blew it out. And that injury has ultimately ended his career, and it's also played a part in Ipswich slipping down into League One, because who knows what they could have done if they'd had a fit John Walters.
Yeah, missed him off the pitch as much as on it, I think. Freddie Sears, for me, he was, as discussed earlier, really starting to find his mojo again after Paul Lambert arrived. He was proving that he can be a goal threat playing wide left, and he looked to have got his confidence back. He was playing on instinct again, and then against Norwich he manages to wrap his knee around an opposition player, and that's him done for the season and probably near to Christmas next year as well.
We're calling this one the Off-Field Saga of the Year award. Who's taking home this prize?
There's only one. There's only one for me, and that is the curious case of Janoy Donasian. Utterly bizarre. They sign him on loan with view to a permanent deal. 750 grand is there, but we have to wait until the work permit's sorted out. We wait. It finally goes through, and then within a fortnight he's loaned back from whence he came to Accrington Stanley, because there's been a change of manager who doesn't fancy him anymore. They signed him as a left back. Well, he was signed having been a left back for Accrington Stanley. Paul Hurst sees him as a right back. Lambert now sees him as a centre back. The whole saga just sums up this catastrophic season.
There's been more though, hasn't there? Jonas Knudsen for me. He was at the World Cup playing in the last 16 less than a year ago. He comes back. Paul Hurst tells him, "You've shown me nothing yet. You need to earn your place." He does ultimately earn his place, plays at left back, is dropped to the bench for what turns out to be a win at Swansea, but does come on at half time in that game. And then he stays in the side. Paul Lambert comes in. We start hearing that actually he would quite like to leave. This is around Christmas time. He's dropped again, comes back, plays a few games, is sent off at Wigan. He comes back in the Norwich game of all games, gets sent off at Wigan, still manages to find another way back into the team when he plays at centre back against West Brom. When a free kick goes in off of a combination of his face and chest, that goes into the back of the net, and that was it. We've not seen him again, and he will be leaving at the end of the season. Oh dear.
Time for a positive one. Best goal of the season.
Eat my goal. Andre Dazelle, final day of the season. That's my favourite game of the season and my favourite goal of the season. A brilliant move. Starts with Miles Kenlock winning it back. Goes through Cole Skews. Great pass. Flynn Downs. Trevor Chalobah. Colin Quainer. Beautiful layoff from Colin Quainer and a really nice finish from Andre Dazelle. Great team goal.
It's a great team goal. If you're into individual goals and top bins, Freddie Sears at Aston Villa, still accelerating as it hit the back of the net. That's eat my goal.
Top bins. $79 goals conceded in 48 games. So can you siphon through this cesspit of goals and pick out the worst conceded goal, please?
They found new and inventive ways to concede this season, didn't they? It was set pieces was the Achilles heel at the start. They managed to give away a string of penalties around Christmas time. There's been some horrible goalkeeping errors in there as well, but the one that sticks out in my mind, there's only one, isn't there? The Bart Knudsen mix-up against Stoke. Bart is hesitant off of his line. Knudsen heads it back towards his own goal. James McLean rubs his hands together. Thank you very much.
I'm going to pick up on 2 goalkeeping errors for mine. They're going to have my joint award. First, there was Dean Gherkin in the home game with QPR. Paul Hurst's last home game in charge. Just clawed a corner into his own net while trying to deal with that. And then Bartosz Białkowski against Bristol City. A cross has beaten him across the box. A shot comes back. It's going wide. He sticks up a hand and pushes it in. Sums it all up, doesn't it?
It really does.
Other than ourselves, in these videos that we do, what's been the best individual display from Ipswich Town this season?
Definitely not us. Best individual display. James Collins, 1-0 against Rotherham. He comes in, makes his debut. Absolutely immense. Something like 17 interceptions and clearances off the top of my head. Absolute man mountain. Boy, did they weather a storm towards the end of that game. Still don't know how they won it. He was brilliant. What a shame that he's only been able to get out there for 6 games, and I think that will probably prevent Ipswich Town signing him further, but that day sticks in my mind.
I'm going to cheat a little bit with this one, and I'll be honest, we wanted to find a way to shoehorn this in. Best display, Blue Action on the final day of the season in the North Stand end. There's a banner there with the Smiths lyric on it and the flags and everything. Great display, great noise from those guys and everybody in the ground all season. Let's give them this award, I think.